The Disinterested Killer, Bill Harrigan. The image of the lands of Arizona before any other image, Arizona and New Mexico. A landscape dazzlingly underlain with gold and silver, a wind-blown, dizzying landscape of monumental mesas and delicate colorations, with the white glare of a skeleton stripped bare by hawks and buzzards. Within this landscape, another image, the image of Billy the Kid, the rider sitting firm upon his horse, the young man of loud shots that stun the desert, the shooter of invisible bullets that kill at a distance like a magic spell. The arid, glaring desert veined with minerals. The almost child who died at the age of 21, owing a debt to human justice for the deaths of 21 men, not counting Mexicans. The Lovell State. In 1859, the man who, in terror and glory, would be known as Billy the Kid, was born in a basement lodging in New York City. They say it was a worn-out Irish womb that bore him, but that he was brought up among Negroes. In that chaos of kinky hair and rank sweat, he enjoyed the primacy lent by freckles and a shock of auburn hair. He practiced the arrogance of being white. He was also scrawny, quick-tempered, and foul-mouthed. By the age of 12, he was one of the Swamp Angels, a gang of deities whose lair was the sewers of the city. On nights that smelled of burned fog, they would swarm out of that fetid labyrinth, follow the trail of some German sailor, bring him down with a blow to his head, strip him of all he owned, even his underwear, and return once more to that other scum. They were under the command of a white-haired Negro named Jonas, a member of the Gas House Gang, and a man famed as a poisoner of horses. Sometimes, from the garret window of some hunchbacked house near the water, a woman would dump a bucket of ashes onto the head of a passerby. As they gasped and choked, the Swamp Angels would descend upon him, drag him down the basement steps, and pillage him. Such were the years of apprenticeship of Bill Harrigan, the future Billy the Kid. He felt no scorn for theatrical fictions. He liked to go to the theatre, perhaps, with no presentiment that they were the symbols and letters of his own destiny, to see the cowboy shows. Go west. If the packed theatre houses of the Bowery, whose audiences would yell, "Hist dat rag," when the curtain failed to rise promptly at the scheduled time, presented so many of those gallop and shoot horse operas, the reason is that America was experiencing a fascination with the West. Beyond the setting sun lay the gold of Nevada and California. Beyond the setting sun lay the cedar-felling axe, the buffalo's huge Babylonian face, Brigham Young's top hat and populous marriage bed, the red man's ceremonies and his wrath, the clear desert air, the wild prairie, the elemental earth, whose nearness made the heart beat faster, like the nearness of the sea. The West was beckoning. A constant, rhythmic murmur filled those years, the sound of thousands of Americans settling the West. That procession in the year 1872 was joined by the always coiled and ready to strike Bill Harrigan, fleeing a rectangular cell. A Mexican felled. History, which, like a certain motion picture director, tells its story in discontinuous images, now offers us the image of a hazardous bar set in the midst of the all-powerful desert, as though in the midst of the sea. The time, one changeable night in the year 1873. The exact place, somewhere on the Llano Estacado in New Mexico. The land is almost preternaturally flat, but the sky of banked clouds, with tatters of storm and moon, is covered with dry, cracked watering holes and mountains. On the ground, there is a cow skull, the howls and eyes of a coyote in the darkness, fine horses, and the long shaft of light from the bar. Inside, 3 elbows on the bar, tired, hard-muscled men drink a belligerent alcohol and flash stacks of silver coins, marked with a serpent and an eagle. A drunk sings impassively. Some of the men speak a language with many S's. It must be Spanish, since those who speak it are held in contempt by the others. Bill Harrigan, the red-haired tenement house rat, is among the drinkers. He has downed a couple of shots and is debating, perhaps because he's flat broke, whether to call for another. The men of this desert land baffle him. To him, they look huge and terrifying, tempestuous, happy, hatefully knowledgeable in the handling of wild cattle and big horses. Suddenly, there is absolute silence, ignored only by the tin-eared singing of the drunk. A brawny, powerful-looking giant of a Mexican with the face of an old Indian woman has come into the bar. His enormous sombrero and the 2 pistols on his belt make him seem even larger than he is. In a harsh English, he wishes all the gringo sons of bitches drinking in the place a buenas noches. No one takes up the gauntlet. Bill asks who the Mexican is, and someone whispers fearfully that the Diego is Belisario Villagran from Tijuana. Instantly, a shot rings out. Shielded by the ring of tall men around him, Bill has shot the intruder. The glass falls from Villagran's hand. Then the entire man follows. There is no need for a second shot. Without another look at the sumptuous dead man, Bill picks up the conversation where he left off. "Is that so?" he drawled. "I'm Bill Harrigan from New York." The drunk, insignificant, keeps singing. The sequel is not hard to foresee. Bill shakes hands all around and accepts flattery, cheers, and whiskey. Someone notices that there are no notches on Billy's gun and offers to cut one to mark the killing of Villagran. Billy the Kid keeps that someone's knife, but mutters that Mexicans ain't worth making notches for. But perhaps that is not enough. That night, Billy lays his blanket out next to the dead man and sleeps ostentatiously until morning. Killing for the hell of it. Out of the happy report of that gunshot at 14 years of age, the hero Billy the Kid was born, and the shifty Bill Harrigan buried. The scrawny kid of the sewers and skull-cracking had risen to the rank of frontiersman. He became a horseman. He learned to sit a horse straight, the way they did in Texas or Wyoming, not leaning back like they did in Oregon and California. He never fully up to the legend of himself, but he came closer and closer as time went on. Something of the New York hoodlum lived on in the cowboy. He bestowed upon Mexicans the hatred once inspired in him by Negroes, but the last words he spoke, a string of curses, were in Spanish. He learned the vagabond art of cattle driving and the other, more difficult art of driving men. Both helped him be a good cattle rustler. Sometimes the guitars and brothels of Mexico reached out and pulled him in. With the dreadful lucidity of insomnia, he would organize orgies that went on for 4 days and 4 nights. Finally, in revulsion, he would pay the bill in bullets. So long as his trigger finger didn't fail him, he was the most feared and, perhaps, most empty and most lonely man on that frontier. Pat Garrett, his friend, the sheriff who finally killed him, once remarked, "I've practiced my aim a good deal, killing buffalo." "I've practiced mine more'n you have, killing men," Billy softly replied. The details are lost forever, but we know that he was responsible for as many as 21 killings, not counting Mexicans. For 7 daring and dangerous years, he indulged himself in that luxury called anger. On the night of July 25, 1880, Billy the Kid came galloping down the main, or only, street of Fort Sumner on his Pinto. The heat was oppressive, and the lamps were not yet lighted. Sheriff Garrett, sitting on the porch in a rocking chair, pulled out his gun and shot Billy in the stomach. The horse went on. The rider toppled into the dirty street. Garrett put a second bullet in him. The town, knowing the wounded man was Billy the Kid, closed and locked its windows. Billy's dying was long and blasphemous. When the sun was high, the townspeople began to approach, and someone took his gun. The man was dead. They noted in him that unimportant sort of look that dead men generally have. He was shaved, sewn into tailor-made clothes, and exhibited to horror and mockery in the shop window of the town's best store. Men on horses or in gigs came in from miles around. On the third day, they had to put makeup on him. On the fourth, to great jubilation, he was buried.